Hey there, Mark Lewis here from Mark's Money Secrets. You know, we have 50 states in the union, and while a lot of people think we have non-tax states for social slaves like you and I mean, there are those, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Washington, but when it comes to a company, are those non-tax states, do they apply to companies? Well, we're going to find that out, as well as what states report and squeal on who's in your company, which states are non-charging states and give you incredible benefits if you're a defendant in a lawsuit, which states are cheap, which states have great Secretary of States, and of course, most importantly, which states should we absolutely avoid. This video, we're going to cover quite a few of these most important states and kind of break out which are best for what kind of businesses, what kind of business you're doing, and which ones give you the best breaks overall. Let's roll. Now, before we figure out what state in which we should incorporate, we first need to figure out what are the attributes of state incorporation that matters to us. Like, for example, non-charging. There are 6 states in the union that allow us to do what's called a non-charging incorporation, which means that if you get into a lawsuit, that lawsuit, if lost, and you get the worst end of the stick, all that the plaintiff can do is put a lien against your company, which means that they get part of the judgment when you sell your company, if you do, and possibly garnish some of the wages or the payments that are coming to members. But they can never take control, they can never get shares in the company, and they can never force a liquidation, which is pretty powerful. The next one you might want to consider is, hey, are they a tax state? There are only really 2 non-tax states left in the union. Now, you might say, well, I'm in Texas or Florida. I don't pay tax here. I know, but your company will. I live in Tennessee, and yes, it's also a non-tax state. However, there's a $150 flat tax for every company that has a registration there. And you're like, well, that's not that much. But if you have 10 properties and each one has its own LLC, that's $1,500 a year, and that's not nothing. And every state that is a non-social slave tax state has this kind of thing. Then if you want to have LLCs that are sort of daisy-chained together, one owning the next, some states don't allow that. Also, is it crypto-friendly? And that's important for me. Does it have a good Secretary of State so that if there's an issue, you can have it handled really well, unlike Texas, which probably has the worst one? Is it cheap? Now, some states have a horrific record of expensive incorporation fees. New Jersey, 4 figures. California, not too expensive, but added with an $800 flat tax, whether you make money or not, makes it over $1,100 a year. Gross. And then if you're going to have any kind of employees, if you're an S-Corp, that's you, then you want to make sure it has some kind of friendly labor laws. We don't want to have some draconian situation where it's impossible to be an independent contractor or worse. For example, in the state of in Wyoming, where we do a lot of our incorporation, the unemployment insurance rates are really quite high. However, and strangely, in California, they're very, very low, and we have to consider all these things as we move them together. So what are the 6 non-charging states? Florida, Tennessee, New Hampshire, interestingly enough, Delaware, of course, Nevada, Wyoming. And these are the 4 states that I like most, that are kind of rate highest on the list. Now, does Wyoming hit everything the best? No, but it definitely ticks everything to green. It has some really, really great things, like it's extremely inexpensive, but everything else is very, very good in that state, and that's why most of the business that I do in incorporation, we set up our clients there. Next on the list is Nevada. It's an excellent state if you're running from the law, because they have an aggressive relationship with the federal government, so that, you know, if they say, well, we want to know who's in that company, the state of Nevada goes, we're not going to tell you, and the federal government says, well, we're going to pull our federal grants and funds from you, and then Nevada goes, we don't care, we're rich. We're richer than any 4 states you can name. Go away, we'll pay for it, thanks. And then, as you've probably heard, Delaware is a good state, especially if you're trying to sell a company. They expect that company be in a state like Delaware, preferably Delaware. However, Delaware is not tax-free, and if you have a C corporation in Delaware, you can expect to pay through the nose on a special state tax, depending on how many shares you have available in that C corporation. I should also mention that Nevada is extremely expensive now and rates high up on the expensive in the United States, but it has such great value that it still rates as number 2. And the strange dark horse entry is Georgia. Not a lot of people know that Georgia is one of 3 states left in the union that are non-reporting states, and that's another very important part of characteristic for why we would choose a state. They're not going to squeal on you if they want to find out who's in your company. That's Nevada, Wyoming, and Georgia. And while, of course, FinCEN and the CTA regulations force us to tell them who's in the company, FinCEN still has to abide by its own rules that say that it won't disclose that information unless there's illegal activity. Georgia, unfortunately, is a charging state and a tax state. But if it's, you're in the South and you want that kind of anonymity, Georgia is a great opportunity for you to go. Now, hopefully this has given you a real good understanding of where you might want to incorporate your business. Depending on the state in which you live, it might be your own state. But in many cases, in fact, most cases, it's probably not. So if you're going to do a foreign representation of your business out of state, that's fine, but just know the provisos for doing so and how the best way to get paid might be so that you don't get ugly letters from your franchise tax bureau of the state in which you live, especially if you're in a deep blue state like Hawaii, New York, any of them New England states, and of course, California. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. If so, please subscribe, and we'd love to see you in one of our mastermind courses where we take you through the entire process of incorporation for about 10 weeks. And if that's you, definitely reach out so we can get you connected with that. And of course, we have a myriad of courses that are available. Of course, the courses, if you're a DIY kind of person, that link for all of those things in our store is in the bio or in the description below. And of course, reach out to us and connect live just about every weekday on Instagram, where we go live, and from the Department of the Redundancy Department, we'd love to connect with you live there. And if we don't see you there, be wealthy.